everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry if we're a bit wonky. Are we wonky? Oh my god. If you will insist on climbing my head. Oh my god. Look, this is a nightmare. Here's a nightmare. Look, if you want a bearded dragon, I advise against it. Look at this. Oh my god. Okay, we're back. Lizard mum problems. Can you just sit? That's nice. Can you just sit on the shoulder nicely like you normally do? Hey everyone and welcome back to my channel. I apologise for today's topic of conversation. Well, I don't apologise for the topic of conversation, but I apologise for the fact that if you were expecting some nice little happy educational video that, well, it is going to be educational, but it's a bit more ranty and a bit more of a serious topic today. Maybe a controversial one even, I don't know. I made some notes because I have been trying to film this like 4 or 5 times and there's just so much information that I want to give you, and I really wanted to structure it in a way that was really easy to understand why I disagree with this and why I think it's important, whilst giving you all the information in a manner that you would be able to understand easily rather than me sort of jumping around. So today's topic of conversation is going to be about silky bearded dragons, or silkbacks. If you're not familiar with these, this is what they look like. I'm first going to give you a little bit of information about me, and why I think, despite my, some people would claim, lack of experience, why I still think that my opinion is valid. I'm also going to give you a little bit of maybe some food for thought on generally the reptile hobby and the way it's going, because it is definitely gaining in popularity and I do see this as a wonderful thing. So it could be something that is potentially problematic if we kind of carry on going the way we're going. So with regards to my experience, as you can see, I keep a bearded dragon. His name is Gary. If you're new here, my name is Hannah. Thank you very much for watching. I also have a crested gecko called Fred. I've been keeping reptiles now for about 6 years. He is my first bigger lizard, he's my first bearded dragon, but as I explained, he's not my first reptile. As you can see, I have absolutely nothing against having morphs. He is a 0, if this is going to focus, and he's a leatherback. So as you can see, he does have scales. They're just dramatically reduced in size, particularly if you look at his little feetsies. You can definitely see the scale there. So I have absolutely no issue with morphs, coloration or scale pattern. It's something that I always was very interested in, but I also love the wild types. I just happened to be in the reptile shop that I had visited a few times, that I trusted, that I'd had nice chat with the staff and stuff, and these guys came in when I was looking for a dragon. That's it. I had liked the hypos before, the hypo zeros. They're really difficult to find in the UK. If I had seen one that was cute and pretty that was a different one, or that was a normal and fell in love, then I would have bought that one. As it happens, he's a 0, which refers to his lack of colour, so he's kind of like a light grey / white, and he is a leatherback, which is the reduced scale size. As much as I'm not a breeder and I don't have 100 animals to show you, I still think that as someone that's really interested in the hobby, that does keep reptiles, that also does a lot of research from various different sources, so talking to people that breed them, interacting on social media with lots of different people. I'm a member of several bearded dragon groups on Facebook. Obviously I have sort of online friends that I talk to and discuss these things with, and I also do an awful lot of research, looking at studies and reading a lot of forums. And again, of course, there's a wide variety of people on there, from breeders to zookeepers to people that it's just a hobby for, etc, etc, all varying degrees of experience. Just because I don't have 100 animals or several decades of experience, I don't think that makes anyone's opinion invalid. That goes for other people on other topics as well. I think that you can find an awful lot of information and do an awful lot of research yourself without having to have that under your belt. I think that it's really good to hear lots of different people's opinions on this matter. I'm sure there will be some people that disagree or will tell me that perhaps I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't breed these guys, but as you can see, I do keep them. I would really love to rescue as well in the next couple of years, maybe a bearded dragon with MVD or something like that. I am really used to the maintenance. He is my child. I have a real kind of passion for lizards, like I'm a lizard girl. Maybe I will turn into like the snake freak when I get my first snake, but I'm a beardy girl. I love them. It's something that I wanted for a very, very long time. I had been researching for sort of years. He's gonna go off now. It's just better than him climbing my head, so there we go. And it's something that I continue to look into. I don't just think when you get an animal your research stops. We're now going to discuss a few sort of my worries about the hobby. As much as I understand the breeding for, you know, exquisite colour and pattern, and as you can see I'm not against morphs at all, I do feel like there is a bit of a shift towards like what can we do next. So rather than it being colour and pattern, we're seeing a reduction or complete lack of scales now. And although beardies have been around for some time, I've recently started to see things like scaleless snakes. And I feel like as we are a hobby that polices itself, I do think pushing the boundaries to these extents that could potentially be causing health issues, as they most certainly will do, and have been proven to do in silkback bearded dragons, I do kind of feel like we are just asking for some kind of regulatory body to intervene and put even harsher laws on than we perhaps would ever want. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't understand. They have a massive fear of, and I feel like we're starting to get into this danger zone now, where it's not just about educating people and breeding beautiful animals and encouraging people to keep these guys as pets and find out about them and learn about them. We're getting to a point where people want to do bigger and better, and as much as that is something amazing to strive for, it can also be problematic when you don't know when to stop. And as someone that loves the hobby and has seen rules come in, laws come in, like in Spain, for example, where you can't keep ball pythons at all, I worry for the future of the hobby when people that, although they're really experienced and have been doing this for decades and were, you know, creators of like some of these most amazing morphs that we keep regularly now, I do worry for the hobby when these boundaries are being pushed so far that someone else who doesn't know enough and someone else that doesn't like what they're seeing is going to put blanket bans on things and affect the, you know, 95% majority of people that keep things ethically well cared for and species that are not dangerous, or do keep other species that have the potential to be dangerous or have issues surrounding them responsibly. I do feel that these few that are kind of going that one bit further, however cautiously, have the potential to start something that could affect the entire population of the hobby. So that's my concern with things like scaleless snakes and these silkbacks, etc, etc. I think you're pushing a line that is borderline ethical with some of these things. That's my personal opinion, but that's where that worry comes from. Obviously also for the welfare of the animal. I'm big on animal welfare. I think it's really difficult to say that you can never cause any harm to the planet or animals in this day and age, because we drive, there's leather in the cars, I have to travel for work, that's my job. You know, there are difficulties surrounding this in the day and age that we live in, but I do the most to not cause harm to other things. And so animal welfare is a big one for me. Now that we've got that really long intro out of the way, let's go into a little bit more depth about what these guys are. I have recently seen a study on the gene that causes the mutation for silkback bearded dragons. Now this is also the same gene that is linked to abnormalities in mammals for glands, hair and teeth, interestingly. And so silkback bearded dragons are in fact thought to be completely scaleless. So when the gene is heterozygous in a dragon, this is what results in a leatherback, like Gary, and when this is homozygous in a dragon, it produces the silkback that we all know, that looks like this. My first issue with this is that bearded dragons are touted as a beginner reptile. That is up for debate. I do think if you have the knowledge and you've done the research, you know, arguably a lot of things can be beginner friendly. You know, if you're only ever going to keep that and you can manage it and you're aware of their heat and light requirements, that's it, you know. It could be argued that dogs are really high maintenance and difficult to look after, you know. So they are kind of touted as this beginner friendly reptile, and I have seen reports from numerous sources claiming to have seen these in pet shops. Now, chain pet shops are a problem in themselves. Not only do they provide a lot of the equipment and, you know, access to food and things for these guys, but they do also provide a lot of wrong information. And it's one of the places that a lot of people tend to impulse buy, or, you know, dad goes shopping for some dog food and their kid wants the lizard in the tank that they know nothing about. This stuff is really dangerous. And when you have a dragon with special needs like silkbacks, it is one of those things that it's so dangerous to be an impulse buy, and it's so dangerous to be selling things like that have different requirements to a normal bearded dragon to people that don't know what they're doing. It's not safe for the animal at all. My second issue with this scaleless morph is that although people love it because it really does kind of make their pattern and colour pop, they look stunning. I mean, I personally have an aversion to anything that doesn't have scales and you're calling a reptile, because I think it's wrong. And I don't really like the look of it, to be honest. Kind of looks like you've mated a bearded dragon with like a, I don't know, like a naked mole rat or something. It's just not something that I think is normal, natural, and as you know, as I'm going to explain to you, they have a lot of problems. But it is undeniable that this lack of scales really does create some absolutely stunning colours and patterns in them, because you can see everything more vividly, more clearly. It really does make things pop, which is why people love them. This kind of scaleless hide does come at a massive price to your dragon, resulting in all sorts of health issues. Now, anyone that's kept dragons or knows a little bit about these lizards, even if you don't own one, knows that they require heat and lighting. This lighting is the UV, and the heat, obviously, some sort of basking lamp. The lack of scale really does offer less protection from UV, so they are far less efficient at filtering UV, which can cause skin damage, and they are far more susceptible to burns. So a lot of people buying these, maybe on a whim, or just thinking that that's like a cool different colour, it can be really dangerous because you cannot keep them at the same levels that you would keep something like Gary. He, although has a smaller scale, has scales for protection and efficient filtering of UV. I have not had to adjust for him. So this kind of lack of scale protection is extremely problematic for these guys as well. The next thing that I would like to talk about are the fact that the babies are very prone to injury. Now, all throughout their life, these guys are more at risk of losing limbs, ends of tails, fingers, toes, that kind of thing, just because of another issue that I'm going to discuss shortly. But particularly as babies, these guys are really prone to losing their tails and fingers and toes and stuff, because babies, especially in sort of a breeding capacity, sort of nip at each other, they fight for space a little bit. It's something that you will see in kind of all sorts of bearded dragons anyway if you're breeding them, but it's definitely more likely to occur in a breeding scenario with silkback bearded dragons. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the breeding of these guys. Now, although it is absolutely achievable to breed them without using a female, if you are breeding two silkbacks together to produce a whole cluck of silkbacks, it is problematic because the males do tend to bite down on the necks of the females, and this, as you can imagine, if you have no scales for protection, can cause hideous injuries and is a harrowing experience for the female. There are other ways to achieve a silkback. You can use a leatherback, female and a male silky or whatever, but of course this is going to be much less profitable because these are seen as kind of luxury morphs, more so than some of the other morphs. They are really sought after and they are a lot more valuable, generally speaking. And so a clutch of all silkies or a clutch of half leatherback, half silkies, or, you know, a minority silky clutch can be less profitable for breeders, and therefore if you have someone that is not a responsible breeder, they could still use a double silkback pairing, and that is a harrowing and hideous experience and can cause injury to both dragons actually. But as you can imagine, not having any scales when mating between reptiles can be quite rough anyway. Is really horrible. It's gross and it shouldn't be done, and it is highly unethical and disgusting in my opinion. So there you go. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the maintenance of these guys. I've seen claims that you can't use oils on these guys because it makes them much more prone to burns, which they are anyway, but it is well known amongst anyone with any interest in these guys that you must apply lotion or creams. I believe it's quite common to use coconut oil, though I have seen information saying again that would be an increased risk of burning, and I've seen a lot of people actually using glycerin, which is something found, if you've seen my beauty channel, in a lot of skincare products because it's a hydrator. So it really does kind of help moisture cling to the skin. And apparently in its pure form, this is what you need to be rubbing on your bearded dragon daily. They require an awful lot more maintenance, not only a change to their UV and heat requirements in case of the burning and not being able to efficiently filter the UV, but they also require you to bathe them an awful lot more every day and apply these lotions and potions so that they stay hydrated and their skin doesn't crack and all those kinds of things. The last thing I want to talk to you about today is the shedding issues. These guys really struggle with their sheds. It's just an awful lot harder. You can see Gary's tail. Are you gonna come say hello? He's like, nah mum, I'm exploring. These guys really struggle with shedding. Bad sheds are something that can happen to everyone if your humidity is a little bit off, or you just have someone that struggles a little bit, an animal that struggles a little bit. It is quite a common issue, especially for sort of newbie reptile owners. It often just means your husbandry needs a little bit of adjusting. These guys require baths anyway. That's something that I recommend you do sort of 2 to 3 times a week, which is what I do with Gary. Sometimes dragons need it a little bit more frequently if they have some stuck shed, as do a lot of other reptiles, but these guys really do struggle with their shedding. It is hugely problematic. Imagine like peeling off sunburn all the time, and babies do this an awful lot. They are going to be sort of in shed pretty much all the time until they're adults, really. Babies shed an awful lot, and this is something that is really tricky for you to handle and is going to need an awful lot of maintenance. So not only sort of applying the glycerin or whatever lotions and potions that you're meant to, but also really keep an eye on their shed, because bad sheds can lead to ends of tails dropping off. Basically, if they don't get rid of the skin that they've outgrown, then you can lose fingers, toes, things like that. It's hugely problematic. So this was a fairly comprehensive account of why I think they're bad and unethical and that we shouldn't be breeding them. I know there are quite a few accounts that I follow that breed these guys, or I've seen on there. Maybe they were rescues, maybe that's by mistake. It's really not something that I think is right or encourage, and it's something that I would never ever buy. I would happily rehome one or rescue one if it got too much. I've also seen lots of people on forums asking to swap theirs because the maintenance and the sort of faff around is such an issue that they want a normal one. And as I said in the start of this video, I just have an issue with stuff like this happening where we're breeding animals that need an extremely high level of care, and yet they are still suffering in some way with their health. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's okay. And I think the silky bearded dragon, I did have a look actually online for any videos. I found a lot of things in forums, quite a few articles as well, which I had a good read of, but really no videos other than Tyler Ruggies, which I'll link up here for you, describing why you shouldn't be buying these. And as Gary is a bearded dragon and he is basically the channel mascot, and a lot of my videos are on dragon care, I do think it's something that I know quite a lot about. And I think it's important to educate you guys on this. Some of the things that are brought up when things like this occur, such as with the spider ball python gene, the jaguar carpet python, the enigma, I think it's lemon drop leopard geckos as well, is that those all have like varying different issues, but something that kind of gets brought up with a problematic morph is that, well, of course they don't need to be able to survive in the wild because they're in captivity. And yes, that is absolutely true, and we can provide that high level of care, but the question is not whether they would survive in the wild, because half of the amazing morphs we have wouldn't, because we've taken away their camouflage. That doesn't affect the welfare of the animal. What we should be asking ourselves is, if we have to give this animal much more special care and it's still having issues, is it okay to breed them? And that is an entirely different question. They are problematic. They do require an awful lot more maintenance than your average bearded dragon, and they you know, and even if you do those things perfectly, they still have health issues because of the way that they are bred. For me, I love morphs, I think they're really cool. I also have nothing against the normals, but for me, it's not a question of like, would it survive in the wild? Because a lot of the, you know, ball python morphs or other dragon morphs would not survive in the wild, because we take away their camouflage and make them really bright or cool looking. But paint jobs don't come with a, generally speaking, health risk. It's really difficult and, you know, a much debated topic on how, you know, how to measure the happiness of an animal, especially when it's a reptile, because they don't kind of have feelings the same as a mammal does. That part of their brain is not developed. So you can't really argue, well, it makes them unhappy or whatever. But what you can argue is whether you are doing the most and providing the exact level of care that they need, and that they're still having problems. If that is the case, which it is for a lot of silky bearded dragons, then frankly, they shouldn't be bred. If you are having to give that animal a higher level of care than is normal and it is still having issues, and you are doing that stuff perfectly or to the best, you know, to the best of your knowledge, or doing it perfectly, it's not meant to be. It is unfair. They are having shortened lifespans. They are having issues. They are losing limbs. They need someone to rub lotion on them. These things aren't good and they're not normal. Other than the fact that I just have a complete aversion to anything that is a reptile that doesn't have scales. These are the things that we need to be thinking about. And the bottom line for me is that I have a fear that not policing ourselves to a high enough standard because we think, oh, it looks cool and that's fine, is going to get us to a point where someone else takes over and then we have no control. Paint jobs, generally speaking, don't cause health issues, but starting to take away physical attributes that reptiles generally need and have for a reason is a massive, massive issue for me. And that includes silkies and scaleless snakes that I've seen over the last few weeks. That to me is utterly terrifying. However cautiously these breeders think they're going with this stuff, I think it's potentially dangerous, and I think it is kind of just like waving a big red sign to some other people that aren't keen on reptiles anyway and don't want them in this country and going, way, go on, try and get us. It's not a good idea. If not for the welfare of the animals because you think they're fine, then for the hobby in its entirety, you need to be thinking about these things. And it is really important to discuss this, and I hadn't seen anyone else talk about it like I just have. So I hope that maybe you've learned something. I would also like to add that if I have anyone politely disagree with me in the comments because they own one and it's fine or whatever, that's fine. It's anecdotal personal experience, then, you know, brilliant for you. I'm really glad that that beardie is happy with you. But I would, you know, a lot of the arguments that come up quite often are that we breed a lot of things that have health issues, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm against all of those as well. I don't think bulldogs are a good breed. I don't think Frenchies are a good breed. I don't think Munchkin cats can be cats properly because of their tiny little legs. Scottish folds are prone to more ear infections because of their folded ears. I have a problem with a lot of things, and there would be a lot of things I would not put my money into. So the assumption that because you're against a specific morph of a reptile and not against anything else because it's cute and fluffy and less talked about is completely entirely wrong, and I would ask you to rethink that argument if that was something you were thinking about putting. So this video is way longer than I thought it was going to be. As you can see, my lighting's changed. I will try and brighten up a little bit and post for you. I really do hope you've learned something. I would really like to hear your thoughts. So yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Please do give it a thumbs up if you have. Leave me your comments down below. Leave me some requests of videos you'd like to see as well. Goodbye from me and Big Gaz. Hit that subscribe button for me, will ya? And I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.